Um,
Welcome everyone to the final Future Work Scotland event of 2022. Been another incredible year. Don't know, I'm having a lot of fun hosting these sessions and collaborating with you all and bringing some incredible speakers to the programme, and we're grateful for all of them. We will do some other reflective shares before the year is out, as we often do. And if this is your first time with us, very warm welcome to you. I do recognise a lot of familiar faces, so warm welcome back. Just the usual sort of quick formalities. We have a very simple code of conduct. All we ask is that you're respectful to one another. Everyone have an excellent time and get a lot of value out of the session. We'll talk a little bit about what we've got coming up. We did share some stuff at the start, but we've had other people join the call since. We'll do a recap of that, give you an idea of what's coming up next year. And as ever, as we mentioned earlier on, we're happy to take ideas from the community as well. So if there's things you'd love to see us bring to this group, do let us know. And with that, I am delighted and thrilled to welcome Karim as our final guest speaker for 2022. Really glad to have Karim here for lots of reasons, not least because he's a real expert in this space, but I think it's amazing to be talking about business agility at a time where it's never been more important. It's certainly one of the things. He's got, incredible experience in this space. He was an ex-head of Scaled Agile at McKinsey. It's extremely impressive. He's been speaking and training and coaching for many, many, many years and doing a whole bunch of incredible work to help organizations to improve their agility. And that's something many of us on this call here are also contributing to. As I'm sure many of you know, he's also written this incredible book, which I'm still working my way through. It's a fantastic read, so I would definitely encourage you to pick up a copy. And this evening, he's going to be helping us explore some of the challenges of business agility and also helping us to understand what some of the key enablers are in improving your own organization's business agility. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the man himself. So take it away.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that, and thank you all for hanging around. My sincere apologies for being late. A 2-hour journey, which I started at 4 o'clock, seemed to take me 3.25 hours. But I guess that's the nature of trains being cancelled. So I am here, and I very much appreciate those who hung around to sort of stay on this call. So I'm going to not waste any more of your time, and I'm going to dive straight in. I'm really not going to make you work very hard. This is going to be a talk. I'm not going to make you do very much, and I might ask the odd question here or there, but I just want to talk you through a few concepts that I've been talking about and writing about, and hopefully we can have a bit of a chat at the end if everyone is still able to stick around and not too hungry. So without further ado, I'm going to pull over. Can you all see that those slides? Let's have a quick fabulous one. Yes. That slide. Good stuff. I'm going to be talking about, thanks for that, enabling business agility and innovation. And for me, the two things go very much hand in hand. And we're going to be talking about that just from a very high level. And we'll see where the conversation goes. So first things first, we really don't need to talk about who I am other than I've been in sort of product development, software engineering since about 2003. Became a Scrum Master, having no idea what a Scrum Master was in about 2008. Loved that job, one of my favorite jobs. Then why I stopped doing it. Just sort of became more of a coach 2012, 13, started coaching senior leaders, and my focus, my passion now, enterprise transformation, culture change, leadership development, changing the organization in order to enable business agility and innovation. That's what gets me out of bed every morning. So enough of that. And I do want to talk about the woolly mammoth, which has a lot to do with business agility, I can tell you. If we go back in history, there is a significant amount of evidence to suggest that animals get bigger and bigger over time, particularly mammals, particularly reptiles. These creatures evolve through natural selection to be bigger and bigger. And that's because there is a competitive advantage to them being big. That being, they can fight off predators more easily. They can catch prey more easily if they are hunting. They can square off against their own. So often you see two lions go against each other, and The bigger, stronger lion will be the one that prevails, and they take over the pride, and then the pride has their cubs, and the other one gets cast out. So then the kind of those big genes are passed on. You can store more resources for the lean times. So there is a competitive advantage. You can travel greater distances as well to have access to resources. There is a competitive advantage to being big, to being strong. That economies of scale really do play out in the natural world. Our ancestors were about 4 foot high. We're about, well, significantly bigger than that. There was a 2-ton wombat that lumbered around the outback of Australia once upon a time, not to mention the dinosaurs, Apatosaurus up to 30 meters high, which is crazy. So you might be thinking to yourself, all right, that's interesting, but I don't see any Apatosauruses when I walk down the street. I don't see any 2-ton wombats in the outback of Australia, and I don't see the woolly mammoth. So if there's such a strong competitive advantage to being big, to being strong, then where are all these creatures? And the answer lies in what nature calls extinction events, or what we call extinction events, but nature serves them up to us. So we can have things like the Ice Age, which is an extinction event. Lots of things become extinct during an ice age very, very slowly. Or the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, where an asteroid slammed into the Earth around about the Gulf of Mexico, setting off a chain of events which led to the extinction of 3/4 of life on this planet. That's animals and plants, 3/4. Now, what's this got to do with size? Well, the evidence from that Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event tells us that of the animals that survived, most were small ground-dwelling birds, small mammals, rodents, very, very few things bigger than cat size. In fact, there was almost nothing bigger than 25 kilograms that survived that. So the smaller creatures had the advantage then. It was those who could find shelter, forage for food, reproduce more quickly that had the competitive advantage, and these big creatures, suddenly that was a liability. So we update our mental model now, and we say when the environment is reasonably stable, we have the big creatures having the competitive advantage. But when the environment becomes turbulent, it's those more adaptive creatures that have the competitive advantage, and the big creatures that once ruled, they're the ones that die out. So I find this very interesting lesson from the natural world, because the same thing plays out in business. The same thing plays out in the business climate and with our organizations that we see. There was a time when large organizations ruled on economies of scope, economies of scale. Now, the organizations that are adaptive, and because that's the same shift that we've seen in the climate that we saw in the natural world. So I'm just going to talk you through one or two things as we go. I like to frame a lot of my work around this concept of exploiting and exploring. So organizations will do a combination of these things. Lots of organizations, all organizations will be pretty good at exploiting their current products, services, and business models. That is optimizing what they have. Processes are understood, plans are predictable, we know what we're doing, we focus on reducing cost, increasing efficiency. We've seen this is just operations. So for a pharmaceutical company, for example, that is receiving the chemicals in, turning those, manufacturing the drugs that we have in the market, packaging, shipping, and sending these around the world, marketing and sales. Right? We're good at that. We did it last year and the year before and the year before. So we know how to do this, and this is no surprises. On the other side, organizations are also exploring. That is, they are creating new products, new services, new business models. Now, this is highly experimental, highly unpredictable, very difficult to plan. You can plan, but you have to replan continually. You have to respond to changeover following that plan. And you're focusing here on learning, on doing new things. So it's a very difficult thing to manage, and it's an entirely different type of work. So for that pharmaceutical company, we're looking at R&D on new drugs. Okay, and that's a very difficult thing to do, because roughly 25,000 compounds that you explore will lead to 25 clinical trials, which will lead to 5 products in the market, one of which will make a lot of money. So if you're trying to pick the winner, 1 out of 25,000, good luck with that. Okay, so it's a highly uncertain endeavor, and lots of organizations, some will do more exploit, some will do more explore, some will sit right in the middle, and we'll talk about that. But I'm going to frame everything through this thread. So like the natural world, there was a time when the world was reasonably stable, and the big economies of scope, economies of scale, that was your competitive advantage. So if we see here on the Model T and Ford, so the Model T was introduced in 1909, and the moving assembly line was introduced in 1913. That turned a 12-hour process of making the car into a 90-minute process. It turned a $850 car into a $300 car. It was an incredible innovation, and Ford became the dominant car company, such that 1 in 2 cars sold at one point was a Model T. Okay, so it won the war by the war, not an actual war, but the battle of the cars, by being incredibly good at exploiting its current product, which was the Model T. And organizations sprung up around this time. They were optimized for exploiting, for doing repeatable work, for making cars, the hierarchies and specialization and bureaucracy, all of those things. That's where it came from. Now, as you well know, towards the end of that 20th century, we had a slight change due to the technological change, the greater interconnectedness, the lower barriers to entry, and we had this hyper competition. And the phrase VUCA entered our language, and we started talking about greater volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, this is what agilists know and have known for some time, that it becomes incredibly difficult to operate in this environment, because making plans is very difficult when the world is volatile. And when there's huge complexity, it's unable to know what's going to happen. And we have that uncertainty and that ambiguity. So speaking just about volatility for a minute, I read some research by McKinsey Global Institute that the pace of change now is 10 times what it was during the Industrial Revolution, on a scale of 300 times, which gives us 3,000 times the impact of the change today versus the Industrial Revolution, just to put it in some context. Now, you can take those numbers with a pinch of salt, but the world is changing quickly, and we can't just make Model Ts for 20 years over and over and over again and be incredibly successful. Okay, that is no longer enough. We need to do more. So the days of just exploiting with efficiency are over, and we're seeing the increase in change. Just let me give you 2 graphs. I know it's late in the evening, and I'm giving you graphs to look at. This is the number of years to reach 25% of the US population for different technologies. You see, it took 46 years for electricity, just 4 for smartphones, 7 for the World Wide Web, and even fewer years for Alexa smart speakers more broadly, but I don't have that data yet. But anecdotally, far more than 25% of the population have it. In short, we're adopting technology far more quickly than ever. And the second of 2 graphs, this is the number of years to reach 1 billion market cap, or become a unicorn, as they say, well, valuation at least. And you can see, typically it took 20 years to get to that point. It took Google 8 years. Slow coaches. And now if you look there, we're spinning up unicorns in months, just over a year, a couple of years. So what this would say to me, if I were a leader of a big organization, which I'm not, but if I were, I would be thinking there could be a technology out there of which I have not yet heard, being leveraged by an organization which does not yet exist in someone's garage. And that could disrupt my organization, not in 10 years or 15 years, in 2 or 3 years. And if I can't respond to that as an organization, we're going to see real challenges. So, all of this stuff already, I'm just recapping it, but the world has gone from a stable, predictable place to an unstable, unpredictable place, and we need to be ready for that. That is why I consider VUCA a 21st century extinction event. Like it's the thing that turns the stable climate into the unstable climate. It's the thing that's going to wipe out the dinosaurs that still are trading, but they don't know it yet. And so we better be ready, because now it's going to be the small organizations, the nimble organizations, the agile organizations that have the competitive advantage. Add to that, that every single product, every service, every business model has a shelf life. Like, I don't care how popular you are, whether you're Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Excel, Amazon.com, you have a shelf life. It might be a bit longer for some and a bit shorter for others. And that shelf life has gone on average from 15 years to 5 years. Now, if you are very good at executing against your current product, but not good at creating new ones, then your longevity has gone from this to this as an organization. Final graph I'm going to show you, I promise. This is the average tenure on the S&P 500 index. You can see, you've probably seen something like this. It's plummeted because organizations can't rest on their laurels anymore and rely on the products and services they have. There is hyper competition out there. Everybody is fighting tooth and nail for those customers. We don't need to talk about these organizations because they were unable to adapt. Rather interestingly, we talk about Kodak a lot as an organization that couldn't respond to change. It didn't want to disrupt itself, but its competitor Fujifilm, which was the other one in when there were two ruling the print market, they were able to adapt. Not in the way that you'd expect, though, because they realized that, you know what, print photography is not a good business to be in. Sorry, print photography is great. Digital photography is not a good business to be in. Now, people aren't buying cameras, they're buying phones. You don't make money off that. So, well, unless you're Apple. And so they decided to take the skills they have in manipulating chemicals to stop photographs aging, to make chemicals that stop our skin aging. So they pivoted to be really big in the cosmetics industry and in the LCD screen industry, and they've grown spectacularly since that since the decline of Kodak. So just, you can see one organization able to pivot and one organization just not able to do that. This really interesting story of the two of them. So now that's out the way, I want to show you the poster child of what I mean by an ambidextrous organization. That is an organization that's excellent at exploiting what they have, but also an organization that can explore what's new at the same time. That's incredibly rare. Exploiting and exploring simultaneously, and no surprises who it's going to be. So 1994, Amazon starts off as a bookseller. Then in 2000, it became a marketplace. Think about that for a minute. It allows other people to sell stuff and compete with it. Can you imagine John Lewis allowing Marks and Spencer to sell their stuff on johnlewis.com? Can you imagine Tesco allowing Sainsbury's to sell stuff on there? That's exactly what they did, right? But it was brilliant. It was a masterstroke. Then what did they do? A few years later, they launched Amazon Web Services. It has nothing to do with what they did, but they launched it. Then what was next? They launched an ebook reader. Why not? Because, you know, we need to sell some more ebooks, and that's been incredibly successful. Then we have Prime Video. We had Amazon Music, Amazon Studios. We have, go into hardware even more, smart speakers. This organization does not stop innovating, and it does it all while improving the offer on Amazon.com and improving the experience and strengthening its distribution network. Wonderful to see what they're up to here, and they spend a lot on innovation. Would anyone like to have a quick guess as to what the revenue was for Amazon Web Services last year? Just a guess. A stab in the dark at 7:30 on a Wednesday evening. Anyone brave enough? No? Well, I will put
15,
you out of
15 billion.
I was
15
gonna say-
billion.
I was going to say 150 billion.
150 billion, 15 billion. You're not miles away. The answer is 62 billion last year.
Oh, we should
Not
have-
bad.
we
Not
should have
bad.
known
Between
differences.
the two, well done. Between the two of
So-
us, we got it.
Yeah, good job, and well done for being brave enough. So as you can see here, this is a massive organization in its own right. And this is what good looks like. Now, if you could take that mindset and plant it onto most organizations, I think we'd have a big impact. So what's the challenge that most organizations face with being like Amazon, with being like Apple, with being like any of these organizations that can exploit and explore? Well, the biggest challenge is we're really good at exploiting. We've known how to do this for the last 140 years. Right? We've honed our technique. We go to business school and study MBAs, and we get good at this. The hierarchies, the command and control management, the dashboards, the reports works well here. And we take what works there and we try to use it to innovate, to explore. And it spectacularly doesn't work, because traditional cultures and structures and policies do not work when you're innovating, because they're just a completely different type of work. This is why when you take the waterfall governance model and you apply it to innovation and agile or product development and software development, it doesn't work. That's why we need agile and agility. So we are going to focus on, because we're pretty good on the left typically, we're going to focus on how to create the environment for the stuff on the right. Because for me, business agility is the ability to continue with your current products and services, but respond quickly and easily and cheaply to the market, to changes, to reinvent new products and services and business models. And it's basically to be able to innovate whilst you keep the lights on. And so that for me is how organizations stay around for generations. But we really need to help them do it a bit better. And that's what us as coaches are really here for. So let's explore that a little bit, shall we? My good friend and mentor, Mike Beadle, who we lost tragically about 3 years ago, he used to say this all the time. It's easier to grow a unicorn than to transform a dinosaur. And for those of you not familiar with Mike, he was the person who suggested the term agile at the manifesto meeting. And so, you know, every time we use the word agile in that context, it's a little nod to Mike. And you know, he loved this phrase because you know, we're in the business of helping organizations, right? But actually, sometimes it would be easier to grow a unicorn. But given that none of us has done that yet, we're going to talk about how we help organizations to transform. Now, I'm going to talk, I don't know why I put that picture in there. I'm going to talk about why agile initiatives often fail. Right? Because we're talking about we want to be more agile, we're going on a transformation, we want to achieve business agility. But you know, most of the time, if we're honest with ourselves, we don't do very well collectively as coaches and as leaders and as organizations, however good the intentions. So firstly, I think there is a strong lack of commitment from many people, including leadership. It's very easy to just roll back to how we were doing it before. It's too easy, in fact. Right? Very few have skin in the game. So that lack of commitment is the first thing I'd say. The second thing is, for me, the wrong people leading the change. It shouldn't be a consultancy. It shouldn't be an agile coach. It shouldn't really be a middle manager. It has to be senior leadership. And I'll tell you why in a minute, given the changes that need to be made. But most people intuitively grasp that. Middle manager resistance, we'll talk about this, but really, if we don't change incentives, if we don't change the system by which they've got to where they are, then they're going to keep doing what they're doing. And there's not really much, we can't blame them for that, right? They're behaving entirely rationally. These last two are interesting though for me. Too narrow a focus. We focus on processes, practices, frameworks, tools, technologies, and we ignore the other 80% of the things we need to talk about. And I will be running through those very shortly, so I won't preempt that. And the other thing is that we have a lack of a coherent approach, as in we have changes made over here, changes made over there, changes made somewhere else, and we don't really know if they're coherent, coordinated, consistent, or driving towards the same outcome. And very few people have that view. So I'll show you a tool later on that can help to deal particularly with numbers 4 and 5 when you're on your transformation. Try and avoid these shallow transformations and try and align everything we do to be in service of the vision that we've created. Of course, assuming we've created a vision, which really is not something I see that often, to be honest. So if you try to install an Android app on an iPhone, guess what? It's not going to work, and nor should it, because that's not the environment for which it's designed. Don't know why you would try to do this, but some people might. If you try to install new ways of working on an organization with traditional organizational cultures and structures and policies and governance, guess what? It's not going to work. And believe me, I spent many years as a Scrum Master trying to do this, many years as an Agile coach trying to do this. I teach Scrum classes all the time to organizations. So they bring me in and they say, hey, can you help us to be more innovative, to be high performing, to be more agile, to be a more engaging place to work? And I say, well, yes, I can. And they say, great, we'll have a CSM and a CSPO, which of course I'm happy to do. But I often, in fact, I always give the message that these things alone, whilst they're good things, right? I mean, Scrum for me is an effective framework. I help people with user stories. Extreme programming is great. Not so much velocity, but design thinking is wonderful. Lean startup, large scale Scrum. These things are incredibly effective, but not if you install them on a traditional organizational operating system. Like, it will never work because it's not the environment for which it's designed. And so after banging my head against the wall for years, I thought I would create a model that would help people to address the areas of the organization that ordinarily get missed and that you need to change before you can even think about installing any of these things. And that is what I call the 6 enablers of business agility. So I'm going to run through each of these things now, and we can, at the end, we can have a chat about any more that you want to go into in more depth. But given the timing, I don't want to go super deep into them because, well, I've just spent the last 2 days talking about this, and I would do it in 45 minutes. Or from here, probably about 30 minutes. So let's begin. So for me, leadership and management, we start here. We always start here because leaders must go first. Leaders must go on a journey, because if they don't change how they show up every day, then how are they expected to lead the change of everybody else showing up differently every day? So as you can see here, what we need to, and we'll know this because we've been talking about self-management for years, command and control, micromanagement, that task focus, that positional authority, we want to move away from that. And instead, for me, an agile leader is one that articulates an inspiring vision, that focuses on the policies, on the structures, on the strategy, and gets out of the way and helps others, decentralizes that decision-making, helps others to make that become a reality. And of course, in the process of that, you have to invest in the growth of those around you because, well, the higher you go in an organization, the more your success relies on other people being effective and being successful. So in a sense, you move from a micromanager to more of an inspiring coach, mentor type leader. And we can call these we can call that intent-based leadership, we can call that supportive leadership, we can call that servant leadership, catalyst leadership, has many different names, but you know these people when you see them because you really feel like they care about you and helping you to be better, and you really want to follow them because they have these inspiring visions and they're happy to empower others to make it a reality. So they can create some really interesting organizations and really interesting cultures. Gary Hamill puts it rather nicely. He says, if your company is basically operating in the 21st century, but on 19th century management principles, and if you think of the pioneers of management, Frederick Winslow Taylor, Henry Fayol, Max Weber, these people were born in the middle of the 19th century, right? And their books came out in the early 20th century. We're still largely operating on those principles. It's crazy. And it's time we did better on the leadership front. Now, the reason this is important, again, this is another piece of work by Gary Hamill, because he talks about 4 different types of innovation, right? But obviously each of these will have radical and incremental within it. But let's talk about it. Operational innovation is great. We should do that. But how we work can easily be copied by other people, right? Very easily be copied by other people. So whilst it's important to do this Kaizen, this continuous improvement of how we work, our processes and practices and frameworks, it's not going to give you a lasting competitive advantage. So what's the next type of innovation then? Well, this is new products, new services. So product innovation, the iPhone, for example, one of the greatest products I think you could ever imagine, sold 2 billion of them now at crazy high prices. And And whilst that will give you a bump, it will give you a competitive advantage. Every single phone looks like the iPhone now with touchscreen technology. Every single operating system looks like iOS. So it's not a lasting, sustainable competitive advantage. Whilst we should do it, it's going to be copied by everyone else because it's too hard to enforce patents, as Apple is finding out every day. So what's next? Strategic innovation, or business model innovation, as I like to call it. New business models. Think Southwest Airlines inventing low-cost air travel. Think Spotify in music. Think Airbnb in accommodation. Think Uber in transportation. This is ultimately, the product is a car from A to B, and that hasn't changed. But the business model, the two-sided platform, absolutely has. Now, this is a much more difficult thing to copy. It's especially if there's network effects involved. So this is a great form of innovation, like in its own right, business model innovation. But again, there are copycats out there, and they can get to you. So what I hear you asking is right at the top. Well, given that we're talking about management, it's no surprise that management innovation is the top of the tree here. There is a reason Toyota was the most profitable car company for the last 40 years, well, for 4 decades at least anyway. And that's because you cannot copy and paste the culture. You can't copy the Toyota way. And they knew that, right? So management innovation is incredibly difficult, incredibly risky, and many shy away from it, but it's incredibly impactful. So I would urge leaders to engage in management innovation. And all the best organizations out there have books written about how they are led. Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Facebook, Google, like all of these all of these companies, they absolutely lead differently to your traditional organizations. And that's one of the reasons they're so much more effective. So that's management. Now I want to talk about culture, and hopefully I'd like to tell you a few things that you might not have seen before about culture. We want to move away from these things, this culture of control and conformity, and move towards, well, the kind of culture that Agile thrives in: the trust, transparency, openness, psychological safety, experimentation, collaboration. How do we create that? Culture change is a notoriously tricky thing. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about why it's important, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you might go about shifting your culture, and see if we can do that in 5 minutes. So back in the 90s, 2 McKinsey consultants, Foster and Kaplan, were investigating a wave of corporate failures. And they were interested in what was behind these failures. What were the causes of these failures? And they analyzed 36 years worth of data, and they found that the #1 cause of corporate failures was cultural lock-in. That is, an inability to evolve your culture when the world around you changed. So either your customers, the markets, your competitors, or your strategy changed and you needed a different culture to execute against your strategy. Organizations found it very difficult to change those cultures with the inertia. And this was the reason they believe that organizations disappeared. Another piece of research by John Cotter suggested that he was trying to find a link between strong cultures and a competitive advantage, right? But he didn't find one with a strong culture. But then he thought, well, maybe a strong culture is strong, but it's not strategically aligned, as in it's not aligned to the strategy and helping you execute against it. So the next thing he looked at was strategically aligned strong culture. Still no competitive advantage there. So then he said, all right, well, maybe you can have a strong culture that's strategically aligned, but actually leveraging what we just saw, the ability to reinvent your culture when necessary. So do we have leaders who can do that? Well, it turns out that if you have a strong culture that's strategically appropriate and leaders who can actively reshape your culture, you get, and I'm going to compare this to the average now, 901% stock price increase over those 11 years compared to 74% average, and 756 net income increase compared to 1%. Right. So looking at this is like as close to the secret sauce as I think we can get. it has to be, your culture must be strong. And that means basically we all agree on the behaviors that we expect to see, and we're willing to hold each other to account. Right? That's important. We're willing to hold each other to account rather than having managers do it. It's strategically aligned, and leaders can reshape that culture. So I use various tools to diagnose and shift culture. Before we move on to the next enabler, the most important thing when you're trying to shift culture is that you stop talking about trying to shift culture, right? Which sounds counterintuitive. But like a shadow on the wall, you can't change culture directly. You have to change it indirectly. You change the light source or the thing causing the shadow, and only then will the shadow change. And it's the same with culture. You don't change culture, but you can change behaviors. And when you change your behaviors, you get new insights, you spawn new values and attitudes, and over time, a new culture evolves. And again, you can't directly change people's behavior. You have to get even another step removed, and you have to create the environment for that behavior with your rules, your policies, your structures, the leadership behaviors, your HR processes, how you recruit, how you incentivize, how you reward, your metrics, your targets, all of those things you have available to you to influence behavior to ultimately end up at the culture you want to end up at. So it's not an easy thing to do, but it's not actually as difficult as a lot of people think. So this is the secret sauce around culture. And you'll find that culture is a big barrier to agility in lots of places. So if we can't evolve that, we're not going to get very far at all. On to the third enabler now. We're looking at, and again, this will be an easy one, so I won't dwell on it. Those functional hierarchies where the analysts sit with the analysts, the developers sit with the developers, the testers sit with the developers. That is not conducive to cooperation and collaboration. Those top-down hierarchies, it's bureaucratic. What we need are cross-functional teams. We've known this since the days of Scrum in the 90s. Cross-functional, autonomous, customer-focused teams. And if you have a bigger product, networks of interconnected teams where you're building trust and you have a shared goal across those things. But actually, this is the one that we're probably the most familiar with in terms of organizational structure. And it's the thing that leaders have the most direct control over. So again, if you're looking for business agility, for innovation, how you bring teams together. For example, if you want to engage in some design thinking, you'll need some business people in there, you'll need some product designers in there, you'll need some engineers in there, and you'll need to go and collaborate with your customer. Right? There's a cross-functional team, the same as Scrum. So almost everything we do has a structural element to it. This is a big topic as well, because this is people, right? And ultimately, Agile is about individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So people and engagement is incredibly important. And, I've saved until the end the two that are largely ignored. I mean, lots of them are ignored, but this is HR. And after that, it's finance, right? Governance and funding. So HR and finance tend to get ignored. And I think that's a shame, because HR is about how we recruit, how we develop people, how we engage people, how we reward people, how people grow and progress. I mean, very little is more important, because your people are your biggest asset. But if we're moving away from an HR policy, HR processes that are bureaucratic, they're about compliance, they're about rules and strict processes and annual reviews, then you know what you're going to get. So we need to build trust, we need to build freedom, recognition, growth, shared purpose, shared values, and we need to give people a reason to care about the work that we're doing. And you've probably seen figures like this. This is 2017 figures. The 2022 figures are out. They're worse than this. So I will update my slides, but this is really the number of people who are highly involved and enthusiastic about their work or workplace, the number of people who drive innovation and performance, 15%. It's pitiful. You've got people who turning up, 2/3 of people turning up just don't really care. And then again, you've got even more people than those who are engaged, who are unhappy and resentful and who are undermining what's being done. This is a sorry state of affairs. I've got 2 little girls, and however crazy it may seem right now, at some point they will enter the world of work, God help us. And I don't want them in the purple or the pink. I want them in the green, but there's a strong chance that they'll spend a good amount or some of their careers in that in that purple order. It's not great when people are disengaged. It's not good for business. It's not good for society as well. I think we need to do a lot better on this. Again, if you needed any more convincing, you look at the standard S&P 500 stock performance versus the Glassdoor best places to work. Now, we know what drives engagement. It's autonomy, it's freedom, it's connections to people, it is being trusted, it is having that shared purpose and shared values, it's growth and development, that autonomy, mastery, purpose in there as well. This is not something that's unknown, right? But yet most organizations, they just don't focus on it. And it's a shame because, again, without great people, without great engagement, no one's going to do the things we need to do. Okay, on to what might seem like a dry topic here, governance and funding. I hope very much that it's not. It's incredibly important. And research from the Business Agility Institute, my good friend Evan is the co-founder of that, and he does a lot of good work there. They've shown that pretty much the #1 indicator of success on your agile transformation is, do you evolve your funding models, your governance models, to be away from those upfront business cases, those annual budgets, those rigid defined plan. What am I going to get? When am I going to get it? How much is it going to cost? What's the benefits going to be? You've all probably encountered that. I need this by this date. Move away from those big upfront business cases that are largely made up anyway, to running many small safe to fail experiments, doubling down on the ones that work, killing the ones that don't, like a venture capitalist would, making adaptive plans that focus on outcomes, not outputs, that focus on products, not projects. And so, we need to evolve it. Here is what a traditional funding model looks like. Here's all the money based on a bunch of assumptions while the risk and uncertainty is at its highest. Now, and we wonder why that doesn't go well. Here's what an agile adaptive governance model looks like. We run a small experiment to bring risk and uncertainty down. We're creating MVPs. We are pivoting. We are testing with our customers in a lean startup, design thinking way. We keep validating and verifying our assumptions or invalidating them sometimes, and then we cancel it until the risk and uncertainty comes down with data. We've tested the desirability, viability, feasibility. Now we can start building the thing out. And if we do that, maybe we have 20, 30, 40, 50 cheap experiments. We'll end up with 4 or 5 really great products that we can start building rather than trying to guess what the winners are going to be. Because guess what? We suck at that generally, and we're not good at picking the winners. So why don't we just run many small experiments? It's how we deal with uncertainty. Mitigate risk, not with upfront thinking and planning and analysis, but with fast feedback. But that's really just the essence of agility, isn't it? So I want to start to wrap it up in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so, and give you a chance to ask some questions. So how do we begin this change? Now, I've worked with many change management approaches over the years, and I don't love any of them. They're not particularly tailored to what we do. One of the ones I really like is V2MOM, Vision, Values, Methods, Obstacles, Measures. And that comes from some Salesforce. And I started to use that. So you create your vision, your values, the methods you're going to use to change. What are your obstacles? What are your measures, right? Your success criteria. But the obstacles part, I thought, I wonder what happens if I split that out into the 6 enablers of business agility. By the way, I skipped ways of working because processes, practices, frameworks, tools get enough airtime. So I'm not going to talk about them. So what happens if I break methods out into the 6 enablers of business agility? And then I thought, well, what happens if I rip off somebody else, Alex Osterwalder, and his business model canvas, and I create that V2MOM mixed with my 6 enablers of business agility, mixed with the business model canvas. So yeah, I'm shamelessly borrowing from other people's work because I don't take any credit for this, by the way. I created myself what I call the business agility canvas. And we're going to go a little bit very, very quickly over what this is. We start with what and why, because we should always start with why. What are we trying to achieve and why is it important? Right? I mean, I've been in so many transformations where we don't do this. And I say we need to be agile. It's like, okay, what problem specifically are we trying to solve? Why are we doing this? Because we want to be agile because someone else is doing it over there. It's like not really the most compelling reason to do it. And then we have the how. These are the changes we'll make across the 6 enablers of business agility. And then we have the what else, because I couldn't think of a cool name to call that last one. So we have what and the why and the how and the what else. And the business agility canvas, as I said earlier, is designed to deal with this narrow focus. Now we kind of talk about the narrow focus, right? We focus on processes, practices, frameworks, tools. We ignore leadership and management. We ignore culture. We ignore structure. We ignore the HR piece. We ignore the finance piece. This is what I mean by a narrow focus and the incoherent approach. You can see now with a canvas how we can check that everything connects to everything else to drive towards that vision, to drive towards those success criteria. So start with a vision. What does our ideal future state look like? Then we have some values that we're going to weave into everything we do. Then we have some success criteria, because I'm a big believer in we need to be able to know whether we're moving in the right direction or not, or we're moving further away, right? So we need to understand what's it going to look like when we've improved. And I'm not going to say when we're there, because there's no there, there's just better. And so what's it going to look like when we're better? Then, of course, we start thinking about what we want to do here at a high level. This is going to be way too much to talk about here, but we will need to take one product or service or value stream with one or multiple teams, and we need to do it there. Not necessarily the whole organization, but for that value stream, we need to get an exempted from the standard governance, from the standard HR. We need to create cross-functional networks of teams. We need to have a different leadership style. We need to create a new culture. We need to get it working there, then we can replicate that out. So what are those things going to be? What are those high-level changes? And of course, well, who do we need to bring along for the ride? Our partners, our suppliers, our stakeholders. Who's going to help us? Do we need some support, some training, some coaching, or do we need to help our suppliers? What could go wrong? What's a key risk? What's already in the way? What needs to be removed by senior leaders? So I like this tool because you can put it up on a wall, you can stand around it. It's incredibly good for collaboration, for transparency, for alignment, and for communicating the change. So it's exactly the same as the business model canvas. That's why that's so powerful. But if we can map all the elements of our business model, we can map all of the elements of our business agility transformation. So this is a tool that is, as you can see there, it's Creative Commons. If you want to download that for free, there is a I'll show you where the link is to download that. There's a 20-page guidebook which will give you some examples and a bit more of an explanation of how to use it. I also talk about it in the final chapter of my book as well. So it's a free tool, and I just want people to use it. And if the guidebook is useful, then great. And you can hack it and you can make it your own if you want. That's why it's Creative Commons. Another free resource that I've created, and again, I'll show you where to find this, is what I call the 6 enablers self-assessment. And you can 3 lightweight questions for each enabler, and you can get a sense of how you're doing in each enabler. It's designed to work with the business agility canvas. I've also actually created an engagement self-assessment as well, which I think has the drivers of engagement on it. Again, these are all free, and you can check those out and download and use those too, because well, if they can help just one person, then I'll be happy. You know, I've got good use out of them. So that's why they exist. So if you'd like to find out some more about what I've been talking about, I have a so much deeper dive in an on-demand version of my class. Obviously, the Certified Agile Leadership class talks about it. My book talks about it. And there's something that blows my mind about having the person whose books stopped me getting fired when I first became a Scrum Master, and that's Mike Cohn. Every time I was on the way in, I was just scrambling to not be found out as not knowing what I was talking about. I'd read Mike's book, and then someone would ask me a question, I'd answer it like I knew everything. So thanks for that, Mike. And he's been very generous about my book, which blows my mind. So really, in summary, and my summary slide has disappeared for some reason. Maybe it's the nature of my rushed entrance. We need, as organizations, to exploit with efficiency against our current products, services, and business models. We need, as organizations, to explore new products and services, because whilst exploiting pays your mortgage, exploring pays your pension. as an organization, I mean. So that's going to be your revenue stream of tomorrow. And when you're doing that kind of work, you need huge agility. And when you're trying to achieve agility, the traditional processes, practices, frameworks, tools that we have don't work. So we need to reinvent culture and structures and leadership and management and HR and governance. And we need to create the business, the organizational operating system for business agility, for innovation. Otherwise, it just isn't going to work. So what I'd say is feel free to scan that QR code. That's going to take you all the way to my link tree, which is going to link to all of my social media. I'd love to connect with you all on LinkedIn, on Twitter. You'll find my YouTube channel. And yes, I have a TikTok channel. Don't laugh. I'm a grown adult, but I'm trying to bring Scrum knowledge to the next generation. Just 2-3 minute videos on questions I get asked frequently in my classes. I just want to put that out there. I'll be honest, I have a lot more followers on LinkedIn and Twitter than I do on TikTok. Maybe it's because I don't dance very well. I'm just kidding. I don't dance in my videos. But so feel free to scan that QR code and you can connect with me. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to say from a formal perspective, other than thank you for waiting for me today. I know I was a little bit late, and I'll tell myself off for that later, but I really appreciate you waiting and I appreciate you listening, and I hope that was useful. And I'd love to take any questions if anybody has them.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and yeah, faultless even with your, as you say, delayed entrance. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed it. I think it, complements your book really well. It's a great summary of the deep dive that you go into the book. We do have some questions, so let me sift through them for you in the chat. We usually finish at 8:30. Happy to keep it going a little bit longer if you're happy to stay for 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes, as long as you've got time.
I'm home now, so I have no rush to do anything.
I don't want to keep anyone from anything else. So first one from John that I've spotted in the chat. So we were talking earlier about organizational culture, etc. So if you need to create rules to allow for an easy change culture, are the building of rules not then fixing the culture?
They're influencing the culture, right? So because, yeah, I mean, you put rules in place. Rules, we will always need some rules and policies, right? But so you can influence culture not by creating rules. You can influence culture by deleting rules as well. And one great example of that is Mary Berra, who took over, not Mary Berry, she makes cakes. Mary Berra, who took over as HR director of GM, General Motors. And she had a 10-page dress code, which she thought was ridiculous. So she scrapped it and she replaced it with dress appropriately, right? That was removing rules, right? And giving people the freedom to behave as they saw fit. But there'll be some things, a rule could be, hey, you're allowed to spend anywhere up to £200 to test an idea that you have. And you can do that without asking permission. That's a rule. That's a policy that an organization can put in place. Yeah, I mean, you might not get it right and you might have to evolve, right? But you put the rules in place to influence the behavior it's not the only thing, it's not the only lever you have, right? You have the metrics and the targets, you have the structures, you have leadership behaviors, you have HR processes and policies as well, and a whole bunch of other things. But between those 5 levers, you can shape what you believe are the desired behaviors that you want to see exhibited, because I think talking about behavior is more interesting than talking about culture. What specific behaviors do we want to see, and how can we create a system in order to make sure those behaviors are more likely, and then our culture will evolve. So yeah, it does kind of fix things a bit, but you can always change them if they don't work. So I would say you have to start somewhere, and that's one place you can start.
Great, fantastic, thank you. There's one here about the VUCA environment, something that a lot of us talk about. How best can organizations within the VUCA environment help and support employees to build agile mindset, agility for better adoption towards leading the change positively?
Yeah, again, when it comes to mindsets, so I'm slightly odd, right? Because lots of people say, oh, agile is a mindset. So for me, I actually think your behaviors are more interesting to me than what you're thinking. So I think you need a certain mindset, but the behaviors you exhibit are far, like if someone's collaborative and they're great for the team culture and they're running experiments. I mean, like, brilliant. That's your actions that I'm liking rather than your mindset. However, the mindset precedes it. So the mistake that lots of people make is they try to create the mindset so that they'll get the behaviors they want. Actually, that's the wrong way around. You need to get the behavior that you want. And when they exhibit that behavior, they see that there's actually a valuable way to behave, and because they get results, and then you reinforce that positively. And then if you do that enough, then the mindset will change. And so I think, firstly, you can't just like go into someone's brain and change their mindset, as much as sometimes I wish you could. You can't do that. So the only way you can change behaviors and mindsets and culture is by changing what we do, and by getting the positive reinforcement. So in answer to the question, how do you get that mindset? You get that mindset by doing things differently, and by demonstrating results that, hey, when we do it like this, it's more fun, it's more engaging, you're more empowered, but we get these results too. And then people start to realize that, and then they get new values and attitudes and insights, then the mindset changes. So it's that way around. I think it's slightly counterintuitive sometimes. Sometimes we think we need to change the mind to change the behaviors. No, we need to change the behaviors to change the mindset.
Nice one. Another one from John. A/B testing, how much do you feel this should play a role on creating feedback and reducing risk?
If you have a strong UX component to your product, then a lot, because so for me as a product owner or product manager, whichever term you prefer to use, I think you should be doing a number of things. You should be helping the team with delivery. That's one thing. You should be helping the team with discovery. That's another thing. And you should be analyzing how people are using the product, right? So if you should be A/B testing everything you do, as such that putting the new feature out or not putting the new feature out, because in most of our ideas are going to suck. Like, just not us, just everybody, right? We're not particularly bad here, but I mean, most of our ideas aren't good, and most of our assumptions are just that. So with products, you can test your assumptions with MVPs. When you have a live product, you want to change it, so you can run as many tests as you like. And I think that being data driven and checking and being analytical about it is absolutely vital, and that's great. That's good product management, personally. And so I would say A/B test away, especially if you have a customer facing product with a strong UX component. I mean, it should just be absolutely core to what you do. All right.
Sorry, I seem to have a lighting issue that suddenly happened in my wee office. Right, where are we? Right, Scott's got one for us. He's asking, how do you introduce team self-assessment wheel without the org making it a competition between teams? Nice.
I would do it at the team level, right? So I think it's something the team themselves should drive, and I see no reason for them to share that info. It's like a retrospective. Well, it is in a sense a form of retrospective. It's do it in the retrospective, and you don't have to share it. When it comes to tracking how effectively you operate as a team, I see no need. Of course, you will need to have some team metrics. Hopefully, our product metrics rather than team metrics. But when it comes to internally measuring yourself in terms of your team engagement, your levels of trust, and these other things, that should be. If we want people to be open and honest and feel safe doing that, then that's absolutely not something that should go beyond the team, unless of course everyone agrees to do that. But I mean, different contexts, is like, there's no need to compare teams, just like comparing velocity, isn't it? It's meaningless, because what's important isn't the number, it's the trend. It's that you're improving as a team, and everyone will have a different way of measuring themselves. I think I would avoid doing that at all costs. Actually, the team does it themselves, and the team owns it. And you have a great scrum master or a great coach working with you, you don't even have to tell anyone you're doing it. Now, if it's mandated from above, I think already there's a level of psychological safety that diminished, and I think you should push back against that, because why would you want to compare teams against each other, right? It just don't see what the so what is for doing that.
Can I clarify, just because that's exactly what I've done in the past with success at the team level. Because of that success, the embers travel across the heather, and sooner or later a stakeholder says, oh, I really like this. all the teams should be doing this and they could be reporting it back to me. So it's really that, any advice on what language you would use to say to the leaders, hang on a second, you know you'll do more damage than good, or how would you tackle that problem?
Well, I'd start with, why is it you need this information? Like because we should track teams. We should track what teams, the value teams are delivering, but from a customer perspective. And I think that's what's really important. It's like these intermediate metrics, which is all they are, right? These are intermediate metrics on how effectively the team is doing certain other things. But really what matters is the value they deliver. So you say, hey, you should absolutely track the value delivered by teams and track the performance of the products these teams are serving. But it's going to be a bit self-defeating if you remove the psychological safety from the team, right? And sometimes people are open to this message and sometimes they're not, and sometimes you're going to win this and sometimes you're not. But you need to shield the team as best you can, and you need to help the people asking understand why they're asking, rather than hey, we should just do this because I want to know stuff. It's like, is this actually actionable for you now? And probably not, to be honest. Now, what could be interesting is if you take your results, you analyze those, and then you go to these people and say, hey, here's how you could support us better. We've identified these barriers. If you could remove those for us, that would be amazing. I've found, I did this as a Scrum Master, right? When people start interfering, have a list of stuff that's incredibly annoying for the team, that holds the team back. And every time leaders start sort of messing with you, you can say, hey, about these things that you're going to help me remove for the team. So either they get rid of those things or they tend to leave you alone. One of those things. It's a tricky one, because in a sort of bureaucratic environment, we love uniformity, right? So everyone should be doing the same thing, but I'm not sure that's always appropriate. So that's a tough spot there. So I probably can't help you anymore, Scott.
No, and that lovely answer. Thank you.
Common problem, really, isn't it? And yeah, no two teams are the same. So I think you've got to attempt to help others understand that there's little value in trying to compare two teams, because the dynamics are different, the people are different, the context is different.
Just on that note, sorry, there was a Mike Cohn blog, was there not, many years ago, about what leaders' roles within agile ceremonies or something, which was always a good read.
There probably is.
There probably is, absolutely. Yeah. He's written a blog on everything. Yes.
Mike, he's everywhere. He's been around so long. So yeah, if you trawl the archives, I'm sure you'll find something there. Any more questions?
There's one here from Sheila. So who should be involved in the development and review of the business agility canvas?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't really touch on that. So for me, I think the most senior leadership should drive the transformation for me. Because if you look at culture, if you look at leadership behaviors, if you look at structures and governance, who else is going to be able to affect those things? So, I mean, ideally, if we're in an ideal world, the most senior leader will be driving it. Now, if they're not, then whoever is driving the change will be the person who is probably leading that review, and the driving team, right? As John Cotter calls it, the team that drives the change. Ideally, senior leaders and sort of the next level. So if it's a CIO, if it's a CEO, wonderful. If it's a VP of engineering, it's like whoever it is that is driving and leading that initiative should be the one reviewing this canvas, because they're the ones prioritizing. They're the ones saying, yes, we'll do this. No, we won't do that. Yes, I'll move this out of your way. But the more people, the better. It's like user story mapping, right? The more stakeholders that are involved, the more. It's not about an accurate document. It's about a shared understanding. And it's about that transparency. And it's about saying, okay, we will do this, we won't do that. And here's why. So the sort of second part of that is as many people should be involved as possible. But certainly whoever is driving and leading that change should be the person leading that, right? So you can call them the product owner of the transformation owner, if you like, and they're leading that.
And there was a sort of secondary part to, go on.
I'll say one more point. I typically advise meeting on a cadence as well, whether it's monthly or every 2 weeks or every 6 weeks, whatever it is. I think we can get into a cadence of seeing what we've done, almost like actually using Scrum to or an agile approach to drive agility. I think that's a really good discipline to get into, because it kind of forces them to deliver something for the sprint review, right? If you do that, or whatever you call it. So that's another thing I found useful.
No, that's great. You incredibly preempted the second part of that question there somehow. Or maybe you just read it in the chat. I don't know.
I didn't know. That's what I tend to say, and I just thought I'll jump in and say it while while I'm talking about it. So
fantastic.
Great stuff.
With the growing use of OKRs, this can be hard to get these teams to. No, it's just a comment. Sorry. Senior sponsors. Question from Scott. What's your take on Twitter and Elon? Some of the community say he is being very agile, others disagree.
Look,
here's your chance. Remember, you're being recorded.
He's a divisive character, isn't he? I think with people like him, I think there's a lot to like and there's a lot to maybe not like. I can't help but think he's going to do something interesting. Like if you can take the car industry and be the first person to break into the car industry, and not just break into the car industry, do it with basically computers on wheels that are electric. Right? If you think about it, there was no electric cars before Tesla, right? Not roadworthy ones anyway. I think that's an incredible achievement. I think creating SpaceX is an incredible achievement. I think if he can do those two things, he can fix a broken social media site. Is he somebody who I would be mates with? I can't say that he is, but I think he's genius from a business perspective. So I'm looking forward, and it's interesting because Gary Hamel just posted an article about, okay, he's not doing it in a very humane way, and maybe we would like to see a bit more respect for people, but he is basically slashing bureaucracy and reducing the layers and the distance between those with their hands on the keyboard writing code and himself. Like he's actually talking directly to, how many CEOs worth 200 billion talk directly to engineers? I think that aspect of it is great. But I'd like to see maybe a bit more respect shown for some people who probably worked very hard for Twitter. So I'm on the fence, but I can't help but think he'll do something interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Twitter evolves.
Does that mean, is that the ends justify the means?
Well, and somebody wrote this, actually, I posted on it, and they said he is so committed to his vision that he cares more about his vision, whether it's driving the world's, accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy or exploring space. He cares more about the mission than he does about the people. And I was thinking about that, so, oh, is that a good or a bad thing? I don't know, because ultimately, if the mission's that important, then making people work 12 hours a day, and by the way, they don't have to work there, right? But lots of people want to be part of what he's doing. Yeah, I don't know. It's really, I'm slightly messing with my head. But he's certainly somebody we can learn from. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer. Yeah, I feel similarly. I mean, he's done enough very innovative stuff for us to think he's got some innovative ideas at Twitter, and I think he does. What he's doing, I think most of us would agree. We find it unpleasant, and it's not nice to see leaders behave like that and treat people like that. I don't think he particularly cares, sadly, but
no, I don't think he is a particularly people-focused person. But some people aren't, and actually, that's who they are. But yeah, we'll see. We will see. They used to say that about Steve Jobs as well, didn't they? Maybe not to the same extent, but he didn't really have Twitter when he was alive, did he?
No, but there were similar traits. There's the story about how Jobs behaved and how he treated certain people, and was easy to get on with, etc. No, but did he do incredible innovative work? Did he transform an industry? Yes. Did he create a great product? Yes.
I think this begs an interesting question, because we as agilists have a view of what good leadership looks like, and he is challenging the mental models of everybody, me included, because we believe that leaders should be people focused, but he's not. But yet he's being successful, and I'm having to reevaluate in my head, like, well, how is he doing this whilst going against everything we teach? And it's kind of a bit of a. I'm still processing it, but it's an interesting thing, and it's uncomfortable to have your mental models challenged, for sure.
Well, no, we know many organizations, are you know, if you do the analysis, you know, psychopaths and narcissists make up much more of a higher proportion of leadership. Yeah, so there is something about those traits that do get rewarded. So it's not completely unlinked, the fact that, you know, his drive will create these outcomes.
Yeah, it is. And then, but then we're teaching people not to do that, but yet some of the most successful people in the world do that, and it's quite a difficult thing to square, I guess.
Maybe we're wrong.
Maybe we are. Maybe we are. Or maybe, you know, if he were more people focused and did some of the other things he did, he'd be even better. Who knows?
Go and coach him. Go and speak to Joe and see if Joe can get you in to coach him.
Well, speaking with Joe is an interesting thing, right? Because Joe thinks he's great, right? And although he did work with him for 18 months, and he thinks he's great. He couldn't hack it after 18 months, but you know, he speaks very warmly of working with Elon. So, and as do lots of people speak warmly about their time working with Steve Jobs. So, you know, two sides to all these stories. Joe Justice, I presume you mean, yeah. Who, despite appearances, isn't a superhero. He's an agile coach, despite the cracking name.
I was going to stick in the chat, but yes, John, it's Joe Justice. Great. No, listen, I did say I was going to extend it on, but you've answered a whole stack of questions phenomenally well. And yeah, we usually finish up on time. I think it's been a great session. It's evening here in the UK. We've got people from different parts of the world, different parts of their day. So I think I'm gonna bring a halt to the questions there and spare you fielding anymore. I think you've done a tremendous job as ever. And just to thank you, Karim, for joining us and helping us close out, you know, what's been another tremendous programme for Future Work Scotland over 2022. Really nice close to the year. It's obviously a hugely important, relevant topic for everybody on this call and many people that we collaborate with all the change we're trying to affect in our organisation. So grateful for you doing this. Thank you. And
well, thank you.
See you again in the future.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you for waiting for me, and thank you for preventing me from watching France, because I really did not want to watch that game after England went out, which
yes, of course.
I won't get too many tears amongst this group. But I appreciate you. Turning up and engaging. It was good fun and good questions, and hope that was useful to you. Thanks, and have a lovely Christmas, everyone.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karim.
Thanks, Karim.
Thanks to you all as well, as ever, for joining us and contributing, participating, sharing your ideas, and putting forward some tremendous questions for our speaker. As I said at the outset, not everybody was there then. Donald and I are building up our planned programme for 2023. Lots of great things coming in the pipeline. We'll start to put those live, hopefully get some of those live before Christmas, so do look out for them. Just to give you a verbal taster, our first event of 2023 will be with Joanne Stone. Some of you might know, she's become a good friend of mine. She's doing lots of incredible work in the space of bringing together Agile and how we can use it to solve some of our challenging planetary challenges. And she did a tremendous panel session at Agile 22 in the summer in Nashville, that was hosted by Lisa Atkins. So yeah, she's doing lots of great stuff. Scott and I have done some stuff with her this year. So yeah, really excited that she's going to be opening up our 2023 programme. And I think it's a very fitting topic, given the state the planet is in. So hopefully some of you will join us for that. And then yeah, look out for some more. Again, just a shout out for Naked Agility. Martin's not here with us today. He sponsored us this year, so grateful to him, and he's also a good friend of ours. And yeah, if anybody else got anything else they want to call out or share, you know, let us know. I was happy to keep all the conversations going, and have yourselves a tremendous festive period. And hope you enjoyed our programme. Do give us feedback, and look forward to seeing you again in the new year. So yeah, all the best, and yeah, good afternoon, good morning, even good afternoon, good evening, wherever you have to be. But thanks, folks, and stay safe and have a great festive period.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Karim. Thanks again.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes.
I'll sign off for your book.